Hello there, my name's Scott. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the Zapper V2, which is a contraption for joining your resistance and no resistance wires, which I received from www.mevsmods.co.uk. That's mevs-mods.co.uk. Before I start though, I must point out I did receive it free of charge for the purpose of conducting a review. My opinion of the product remains true, honest and accurate as always. Okay, let's go straight ahead and show you in a bit more detail. Okay, so the Zapper V2 is going to be beneficial to anybody who uses an atomizer that requires the use or combination of resistance wire and no resistance wire. And prime examples of that would be something like the e-cig or the Penelope. Now normally when it comes to joining the wires, what you'd have to do is cut the wire to length, then start twisting the ends together, loop it over and then start wrapping it around. And it's quite a long sort of drawn out process. It's also quite fiddly. And that's where the Zapper V2 is going to be beneficial, because it very simply just fuses or welds the wires together. Okay, so if I just remove the back panel to show you the insides, and that's done by simply unscrewing the 4 Phillips head screws. As you can see inside it's very neat and tidy, and overall it does look like a nicely sort of constructed little device. And you're going to find space for 2 batteries. Now one is going to be a 9-volt battery, and that's used for powering the LED meter. And the other one, which is an AA battery, is used for building up the charge. Now on the front of the Zapper, you're going to find your main on-off button, 2 buttons on either side, and these are used for your power up or voltage up and voltage down, 2 electrodes, and a really nice and easy to read LED screen. Okay, so the Zapper V2 works by building up a quite high voltage and then discharging it. And at the point of discharge, that is when it's going to actually fuse the 2 wires together. So let's say for example then that this finger here is my no resistance wire and this finger here is my resistance wire. I'm going to attach each wire to the electrodes, turn the unit on, build up the voltage, and when I touch them together you're going to get a loud sort of crack and a spark, and that will then fuse them together. Now obviously the Zapper V2 does use quite high voltages, so it is important to exercise a little bit of caution, use a little bit of common sense, and make sure you don't touch the 2 electrodes with your bare skin, otherwise you will get a shock. And it's going to be quite nasty. Okay, so as you can hopefully see there, I've just cut off a piece of resistance wire, and I like to attach it to the sort of fixed electrode here, the one that isn't on the actual sort of long cable. And hopefully you can see that I've left it overhanging probably by around sort of 2.5 millimeters. I've then taken a longer piece of the no resistance wire and attached it to the electrode that's on the long sort of cable, and again I've just left it overhanging by around sort of 2.5 millimeters. Right, so for the next step I simply need to turn the device on and then set what voltage I want to use. So I'm just going to turn it on now, and as you can see I have a really nice sort of large and bright LED screen, makes it really easy to read. Now these 2 buttons on either side are going to be your voltage up and your voltage down, and what voltage you actually set it to will be determined by what sort of gauge wire you're actually using, and it will take a little bit of fiddling around and sort of experimenting to try and work out what the correct voltage is for the sort of type of setup you're going for. Now I'm using some 0.16mm wire here. I'm going to set this to around 60 volts, and it seems to be sort of pretty much spot on. Now bear in mind I'm having to do this looking upside down, so I've probably gone a little bit over. But that's around sort of 60 volts there. Now the good thing about this V2 is that it has this screen. On the V1 you didn't have a screen, so you just had to sort of try and judge it by counting in seconds. Whereas this one though, now you've got the screen. Every time that you've worked out exactly what voltage you need for a certain gauge wire, you can go straight to the voltage and just sort of dial it in and get it spot on pretty much every single time. Okay, so for the next step, now I've got the voltage set, all I need to do is touch the 2 ends. You're going to get a bit of a bang, a bit of a spark, but that should be enough to actually fuse the 2 wires together. And that's it, job done. And then to finish off, I just need to repeat the process with the other piece of no resistance wire. So again, set it to around sort of 60 volts, touch them together. And that's it, and I have my no resistance wire, my resistance wire and my no resistance wire all nicely joined together. Okay, so what I just showed you there was the sort of basic way of using the zapper to join your resistance and no resistance wires. And it works great like that. But what I do find though is that when it comes to actually wrapping your coils, sometimes you might finish the last coil right where the join is, which then sort of puts a little bit of extra sort of wear and tear on it, and sometimes it will snap at that point. So what I personally like to do is actually wrap my resistance wire around the wick and then cut off two little sort of tails, as you can hopefully see there. And then I'm going to place this inside the electrode and then join the wires from that point onwards. And this just allows you to have the your coils very neatly on there and also well away from where the actual join is. And I'll quickly show you how I do that now. Okay, so to do this method, I've just obviously wrapped my coil around the wick, cut off the two ends, leaving an overhang again of around sort of 2.5 mil. And I'll just place it in the clamp right on that first coil there. And then from this point onwards, I'm just going to repeat the original sort of procedure. So once again, I've gone to around sort of 60 volts there, and I'm just going to touch the no resistance wire to the resistance, and hopefully that should fuse it together. And hopefully you can see what I've done now is just place the clamp onto the last coil, and again just going to repeat the same procedure. And there you go, both of the wires are joined nicely. Okay, so hopefully you can see that what you have here now are all your coils nice and neat, and the actual two joins are nice and strong, and they're away from the last coil. And as they're not actually being wrapped around the wick, it means they're going to be sort of having less stress put on them and less chance of them actually breaking. Okay, so that was the Zapper V2. Okay, so that was the Zapper V2, and for me it's a big improvement over the V1. Now I purchased the V1 quite some time ago now, and it works, you know, perfectly fine. But the big improvement with the V2 is definitely having that big LED screen. Now the reason for that is on the V1 you didn't have any screen, so what you'd have to do to build up your charge is hold down a button and then sort of count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and try and work out, you know, what charge you needed for that particular gauge of wire. And so after sort of quite a bit of experimentation, you worked out that, you know, sort of 3 or 4 seconds would be all right for 0.16, and then obviously, you know, hold it down for long if you're going to go up in the thicker gauges. Whereas with this one, you can be a little bit more sort of accurate. You know, once you know what voltage works well for the type of gauge wire you're using, press it down straight up to 60 volts, connect your wires, touch them together, and that's it, you're good to go. One thing I didn't really sort of touch on in the close-up shots is that when you touch your wires, try and do it so they're overlapping. Rather than be sort of end to end, try and do it so they're overlapping by about sort of 1 millimetre, and I personally find you get a sort of better join that way. In the close-up shots, I was using 0.16 millimetre wire, and I was setting it at 60 volts. Now, I could go through loads of different sort of combinations, but I could literally be here all day because you have to do different voltages for different gauge wires, and there's obviously a lot of different gauge wires. And it's also going to depend on whether you're using canthal, nichrome, nickel, silver, etc., etc. as well. So it is going to be there is going to be a sort of a certain amount of experimentation required, depending on what sort of gauge wires and what sort of material wires you're actually using as well. But like I said, once you've worked out, you know, what voltage works well with a certain gauge wire, and that's it. Once you've worked that out, it's very simple to use afterwards. You know, connect your wires, press down the button to whatever the voltage is that you know works well for that gauge wire, touch them together, and that's it, they're joined. You know, there's not a great deal sort of to it really once you've done that experimentation and worked out what voltage works well with sort of certain gauge wires. It's a nicely made little unit. It's quite compact. It looks quite good. Like I said, the actual construction inside is you know, quite neat and tidy. Definitely a lot nicer than what I could ever do myself personally. And it works well. You know, if you are a person who likes to use things like your Penelope, Odysseus, or the little sort of E-Baron drippers, which use the sort of combination of resistance and no resistance wire, and you're fed up with having to sort of try and join them yourself or forking out money to buy sort of pre-joined wires, which some websites sell now, then it's probably a worthwhile investment because it does work well, and obviously saves you a lot of time compared to actually sort of joining them up yourself by hand. I'm not too sure what else I can really tell you about it. It's a good device and it works well. It does exactly what it's meant to do, basically. So if you fancy trying one out for yourself, go along to www.mevsmods.co.uk. That's mevs-mods.co.uk. Thank you very much for watching. Also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. That's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping. See you later.